incremental. And so we were able to be a part of the disability task force last year. And Rep. Willard is sponsoring one of the implementation bills of the disability task force this year that we'll talk about later on in our programming. And then I also want to see Representative Knox, who I know I'm interrupting your conversation. Excuse me. Sorry, Jan. It's okay, though. Representative Knox would like to say anything. This is a testament of people power, Representative Knox. Many of you all were at the table when he was elected, so I do want to give you the mic.
Thank you. And for most people, I'm not a speaker. My colleague pretty much said everything. So it's not a whole lot for me to say in following him. But other than thank you all for being here, I recognize a lot of faces and the new faces I've met. I'm pleased to get to know you guys more. I do want to give a shout out to the people I do know from VOTE and that whole coalition. So I'm very appreciative that this organization has come to this location in the face of the Capitol, because you guys are on the front line and you're representing everything that to make all of our communities more equitable and more beneficial for everyone. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Um, yes, and that's good. We're happy that Representative Knox is deciding to spend his lunch with us. We know he's in the right place at the right time with the right folks. And so, organizations, we are led by mostly Black-led organizations, many of them Black women-led organizations. Our board chair, Jerry Hopty, many of you all know, would like to bring you official greetings on behalf of the Power Coalition. And so I would like her to come up to the front.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the entire board of the Power Coalition, I want to welcome you, but more than that, I want to thank you. I know we are a gathering of mothers, brothers, sisters, fathers, and young attorneys, people who are free, people who want to be free, and we're going to be free. And I appreciate everything that you have done, not just in being here today, because I know it's taking some of you from work or other assignments. This is a day that we have to engage in, because
representation of the work that we were able to do in 2022, work that we were able to do because of many of you here in this room. And so from redistricting and fighting for true representation and to have our, to have our voices to be truly heard in this process, to be able to elect candidates of choice. Really excited that we are on the precipice of having a decision from the Supreme Court. I do believe that we will be victorious. I do believe that we will not actually have them gut Section 2. There may be some tweaks, but at the end of the day, that it will hold strong. And I was telling the pastor earlier this morning, I was like, if this Supreme Court case reminds me that at the end of the day, right, like the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And I feel like this particular moment with the Supreme Court case really makes me feel that way, that like this is really about who has voice and who doesn't. And also the reality that we are certainly not in a place where the federal government doesn't need to be involved in us having equal voice and equal, in equity in any way in this country. And I always remind folks that every right that I have as a Black woman in this country was given to me by the federal government or the federal courts, and then protected by the federal government and the federal courts. And so as long as that is still true in 2023, and we're not making laws so that I don't have to have my freedom legislated, then yeah, we need Section 2. We need Section 2 and more. But also what you'll find in there is the work of our partners, so much of the legislative work that happened last year. and the ongoing fights that are going to be necessary for us to really continue to push. I do feel like this year, this legislative session, they are trying to roll back many of the things that we have yes, I'm going to invite Frankie up to come and sit with me and have a little Oprah style chat about maternal health. And so if you guys will join me in welcoming Frankie Robertson. So,
hey, Ashley.
Hey, I know. Wait, I might have to go sit down. But so yeah, let's talk. So you've got some legislation this year that you're moving. I know we just had Black Maternal Health Week last week. Talk to us about the wins that we've had in the last 2 years, and then tell me what we're still fighting for.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for your continued support. Power Coalition has been working alongside maternal health advocates throughout the way to make these wins possible, and your support has been really what has been really essential to making sure that these measures move forward. So thank you. Mm-hmm. So last year, we worked with several legislators, one being Representative Willard, on a piece of legislation that set the foundation to establish a system for doulas, which are birth workers, birth partners, to be able to, be reimbursed work this past year, feverish portfolio. Prior to last year, he worked with us to create a perinatal maternal mental health task force, and that task force was charged with creating solutions to the maternal mental health roadblocks in our state. We followed up the next session, which was last session, with actual concrete legislation that required doctors in the postpartum period, meaning pediatricians at well visits and OBGYN visits after pregnancy, to screen mothers for perinatal mood disorders. So those were two big items from last year.
Excellent, excellent. And so let's talk about like why this is so important. I mean, I think, can you talk a little bit about, like in terms of trying to give, Black and brown mothers more voice, more say in the birthing process? Can you talk a little bit about what doulas do? Like what is their role in the childbirthing process?
Absolutely. And when you look at the bigger scheme of things, of all of the policy needs there are, I mean, this is one piece of legislation, one particular piece of the movement that would help improve maternal health outcomes. It's certainly not a silver bullet, but it's a necessary step. So doulas are multifaceted in their role, or say our role, because I've been trained as a doula as well, in providing support to birthing people. So doulas are basically a person. Doulas do not deliver babies, right? They're not midwives. They're not physicians. They are cheering you on throughout your pregnancy. They can attend doctor's visits with you. So it's really neat because they're really an extra set of eyes and ears, right? They can help you with shape your advocacy. They can help you process things when your medical professional is not around. And they are there. They're the person that you hire. Now, you hired your doctor too, but sometimes there's not that, it's a different dynamic. But this is your person that you hire as your coach. They can help you in your postpartum period, and then they are there for your actual birth. So they are really essential because they are trained in areas to know basically everything that happens during pregnancy and childbirth and the postpartum period, and even lactation.
Oh, excellent. And then, how can folks get involved? How can folks learn more about the work that you're doing? And then also, too, how can they get involved as you fight to move this legislation forward this year?
Absolutely. Can I tell you real quick? One is a bill that would increase Medicaid reimbursement rates for midwives. The midwifery model of care is different than OBGYN care. Midwives can save lives, and that particular model of care is much more a hands-on approach, more family-centered type of centers, which mirror more like the setting of your home. And it's just a really good model of care if you choose that for your birthing team as opposed to an OBGYN. So that's one of the bills. And then we've also worked with various partners. You can reach out to, you can follow the Manla Group. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I try to keep legislative updates there. There's an organization that really centralizes the work that I provide for my clients, and that's the New Orleans Maternal Child Health Coalition. And their handle on all of their social media pages is at NOLA MCH. That's NOLA.
And whether it was my own sister or whomever, like these issues are serious, and they're and that it's not even just that it's a number anymore. It more that we all have a story, and that's what's really unfortunate is that it's one of my good friend's daughters. I mean, all of these different stories about what's happening, because it's not just maternal death, it's also lots of issues once your baby's here. There are lots of issues keeping baby. We also have a high infant mortality rate as well.
We do. And there's trauma associated with all of this, with preterm birth like I experienced. So that really increases the need for things like mental health support that many of us aren't truly able to access, or quality mental health services. After I had my daughter 3 months early, that was really traumatizing to me. And, I'm privately insured. I have access to resources that, I'm happy to have access to be able to get the support that I did, but I know that that's not the reality for everyone, and it wasn't even always my reality to have that access, right? So just understanding that, I think I'm preaching to the choir that, there's an inequitable structure here, and it disproportionately is impacting Black and brown birthing people. And everything that we do, the policies that I named are pretty obvious that they're maternal child health, but it's really the work of the issues that you and your team are bringing forth, the social justice issues that are interconnected to maternal health. When I started the Manla Group, that was my focus, connecting all these systems to maternal and infant health, because people want to think about, okay, does someone have access to care? Does someone, have this? But it is the criminal justice system. It's the economic justice. It's housing. All of those things
powerful in that process, and we've seen quoted by legislators that that really powerful testimony that talked about the fact that our young people don't have a lot of hope in this state, and the hope in this leadership to do the right thing, and so kind of share with us that like that story, that work, and kind of how redistricting and those experiences also keep you involved in the session as we speak today.
Sure. First, thank you so much for having us. And we really appreciate the support that the Power Co understand that redistricting is really important in making sure that we have leaders who really want to represent our communities in an equitable way.
Excellent, excellent. I know, like every time she talks, I just get so excited because I was like, oh, I'm not going to have to work forever. Oh my God, the young people are here. And so, can you talk a little bit about like what also has been going on in your administration while you've been at Dillard, and then how you guys have stayed involved in legislative work?
Yes, of course. And I would also be remiss not to acknowledge my Vice President, Tyler Finley. Tyler, raise your hand. Yes, he is my good friend and partner in progress is what we call each other. But under the under the 87th administration, we've really worked on fortifying Dillard University and student leadership on campus. Most people think about the HBCU experience and how amazing it is, which is wonderful, but SGA plays a really crucial part in that. And if you think about social movements, there really hasn't been a social movement without the heart and the talents of young people. And so SGA plays a vital part in that. We've also worked specifically on building a reproductive justice task force on campus, knowing that students now don't have access to abortion, but Dillard is an overwhelmingly has an overwhelmingly female identifying population. And so we wanted to make sure that our students have the resources that they need in case they have to make that type of decision. So that was one of the key programs that I implemented under my administration, but also creating more opportunities for grants and programs. We realize and acknowledge that HBCUs are underfunded, and that's a lived experience that we have to deal with every day of not having funds available to go to conferences or approve different programs. And so I created the Director of External Affairs, which really works to identify areas for us to raise money for our administration.
Excellent, excellent. Come on, young people. And so can you talk a little bit, I mean, I referenced the comments you made on the record last year during the redistricting special session. Can you talk a little bit about both your testimony that day, but also what's happened since that day, like opportunities to be involved and engaged in redistricting?
Things have really picked up, I must say. I went during that day. I wanted to be very tactful and strategic about what I said because I meant what I said, but I wanted legislators to understand that young people are watching you. I think a lot of times we talk about the voter base, but we are the voter base. We will continue to be the voter base, and so it's important to listen to us. So that was the key thing when I spoke on the record. But ever since then, I was granted the opportunity to appear on the PBS NewsHour, not once but twice. Yes, that was amazing, and to really talk about the work that students are doing on the ground every day and our lived experiences. And then I've also been featured in the Washington Post for the work for the Reproductive Justice Task Force. Thank you. And I'm excited to see where it goes next. I'm an urban studies and public policy major. This is very much so my lane of I don't want to say expertise. It's getting there though, but I really want to work on encouraging young people to use their voices and to use policy as a tool for systemic equity. So I'm not going anywhere.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your perspective. And, there's so much powerful energy, and I appreciate, again, the young people are here. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maria with Step Up. Will you come and join me? So last year, we had an interesting piece of legislation that was so misunderstood. And again, when we talk about the power of you, okay. I know, look this heel, honey. And so one of the, so we had a constitutional amendment around removing the word slavery from our state's constitution, and the way that the bill was written, or the way the language was written, I think, there were a couple of things. I mean, Lisa, I just wanted to get into a discussion because I think that there are a lot of thoughts, right? Like, I think that we are, like in Louisiana, like there's always this struggle of the chicken and the egg, right? Like, do we take the words out and then, and then fight? Everything is a little bit cumulative in Louisiana. But then I also feel like there was so much confusion because so many folks that I talked to thought that indentured servitude was like new, or that we were like somehow codifying it as a new thing. I was like, this has been happening since the Louisiana Purchase. What are y'all talking about? Like, this has been, unfortunately, the way of our state, since its founding. And so just wanted to kind of hear and talk to you a little bit about that fight and where we found ourselves today.
Yes. Thank you for having me to come up and just explain that process from last year. As many of you know, I'm Maria Harmon, one of the co-directors and co-founders for Step Up Louisiana. I also serve as board chair for Decarcerate Louisiana, and that is the organization that spearheaded the cause to abolish the slavery exception clause in our state constitution. Currently, right now, in Article 1, Section 3 of our state constitution, the slavery exception clause is codified into law, which means it pretty much reflects what the 13th Amendment says, which is involuntary servitude and slavery is abolished except for cases of imprisonment or a conviction of a crime. So essentially, we have codified criminalization as a means of slavery. So any person that is incarcerated in the state of Louisiana is considered property of the state. Their personhood, their citizenship is challenged when they are incarcerated. When you look at their amenities and the rights and their human rights being infringed on while they're being incarcerated, it's all justified because of this slavery exception clause that's in the state constitution. Last year, we have been pushing this effort for at least 4 years now, and the first year we brought it forward was in 2021. We were defeated. Unfortunately, the bill was sponsored by Representative Edmund Jordan. It did not make it out of the Civil Law and Procedure State House Committee, which means it died there. And we brought the bill back in 2022, and Edmund Jordan sponsored the bill again. And we actually were successful in getting it out of the Civil Law and Procedure Committee, and it went on to the House floor, passed unanimously, went on to the Senate side, And we also gained a lot of co-sponsors. And what got me is there was some language that was amended in the bill. And at the time, Representative Jordan was amenable to that amendment, which was to add a clause in there, and it was Representative Nelson who had advised that we consider it because it was mirroring the law that Utah had passed. And what the amendment did was to say slavery and voluntary servitude are prohibited, period, and below the amendment said otherwise, the otherwise lawful administration of criminal justice, which just means that we kept that language in place to ensure that people who are incarcerated still have opportunities to work. They still have opportunities to participate in work release programs. But now that we have broadened the interpretation of the lawful administration of criminal justice, people incarcerated can now challenge the court to be paid a full minimum wage for their labor or be paid their full wages. And it could also challenge the additional fees they may incur with whatever wages that they do earn while they're being incarcerated. And unfortunately, though Edmund Jordan was on board with it, he started to get pushback from other people. Some miscommunication happened between us as grassroots people and him, where all of a sudden we see an article from him in like August of last year that said to vote no on Amendment 7. And the act that we passed was Act 246. What made people really confused, though, was the language of the ballot question. And it was a lot of discourse. And I just want to recognize some of our valuable partners. Step Up was on board with this. Vote was in support of this as well. But it was very challenging because our campaign was in the exception. And the ballot question did not properly reflect the language of the bill or the law itself, which really confused voters. And I said, how can we have an in the exception campaign when we got accept in the ballot question, you know? And that really hurt our efforts, and everybody was so upset with how it came out. There were some people who still voted yes. I voted yes on Amendment 7, but the language was intentionally tricky because you have a lot of people that let this constitutional amendment passed through all levels of the legislature, but because it's a constitutional amendment, y'all, we have to vote on it. It's left up to the voters to change that law. So what happened is the ballot question said, do you support the abolition of slavery and voluntary servitude except for the lawful administration of criminal justice? So because of how the ballot question was drafted, it really left for a lot of confusion and people thinking that we're recodifying slavery, which wasn't the case. So here we are again. We brought the bill forward again this session. The bill has been filed by Representative Edmund Jordan again. It's House Bill 277. And right now the bill is standing in its original language, which says involuntary servitude and slavery are prohibited, period, no exception. We want to stand on that language. We don't want any amendments. We don't want to make ourselves amenable to any changes. We don't want any confusion. So we're really hopeful that we have successful passage this session out of the Civil Law and Procedure Committee, out of the House floor, onto the Senate side, and that it be signed again by John Bel Edwards, and that it be properly postured as a valid question that is clear for everyone to vote yes on, hopefully this fall. So that's pretty much the course of where we're at now. And just so you know, this is part of a national strategy. You cannot amend a federal amendment. You know, the only way you can do that is if you have 2/3 of the states in this country that vote to amend their own state amendment and add a 28th amendment that says slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited, no exception. So this part that we're doing in our state, which is why we were telling people to still vote yes on Amendment 7, because we would have been part of that larger strategy. But thankfully, there were 4 other states. We were one of the 5 last year, but though we didn't pass, we're going to be on that list again this year. But there were 4 other states: Alabama, Vermont, Tennessee. Oh, goodness, I'm thinking of the 4th one. I can't think of the 4th one right now. But we had other southern states that did their part. So again, the more states that amend this, the better, because then we'll be able to make that federal action when that time comes.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. And then, how can folks learn more, and how can they get involved?
Yes, so follow our page, Decarcerate Louisiana, on Facebook. We'll be sure to have updates there for the upcoming legislative session in the traction of House Bill 277. Also, you can follow Step Up Louisiana. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. And you can email us info@stepuplouisiana.org just to be more involved with the process. I feel like the more we inform folks early on, the better, because a lot of folks didn't even know this was going on till the ballot question came up last year. So we definitely want to keep y'all involved throughout the whole civic process of for us to all get free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And, and I think, too, that this is also a part of that. Like I keep saying, this session really is about, kind of the moral, like there's just a moral imperative around, like I think so much of that discussion and confusion and, kind of what was happening with that constitutional amendment last year, really came out of a place of like, folks trying to do the right thing and not truly understanding all of the things happening in the law, the confusion with which we write all constitutional amendments in this state, and all of those things. And so we have another bite at the apple. And so we'll definitely be sending out action alerts in support of that. And I am so excited that my good friend Devontae Lewis was able to join us today. But I'm gonna put you over here because the microphones will make a lot of noise. But so, so there's so much to say. But let's see. Congressional District 2, District 3, Public Service Commission District. There were a lot of districts. There's a lot of things. And we're so proud to have one of our own. This is also, a really powerful story of like, we do this work and we sit at these tables and we fight. And that sometimes we are the ones we're waiting on. We are the ones we're looking for. And to have an advocate, who has fought so dearly for so many things in our state, in particular our young people and and social justice issues, kind of move into the political fray is certainly something to be very proud of. And then also too to still have him on the front lines fighting for economic justice and many of the other policies that our good friends at the Louisiana Budget Project support. And so with that, one of the things we're kind of reviewing 2022, also looking forward to 2023.
You can kind of say that.
Yes, and so do you want to talk, share with me kind of, what made you decide to run for Public Service Commission, and and how do you see it as a part of your larger story and journey to this moment? Because you've been pretty active all your life. You were an SGA president too, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
Yes, and so talk to us a little bit about like what led you to this decision and this moment.
That's a good question, and good to see so many friends. I apologize for being late. I am battling, working so hard, a sickness. So traveling so much for the people of Louisiana, I got a sinus infection. So if my face looks like it gets a little puffy, I'm working through it. But Ashley, to answer your question correctly, I think part of what got me here was the work that we all do, right? I think so many of us get together every year, and we're always trying to convince people in that building, people at the mansion, people in these state buildings behind us to do what we say and to really consider us in policy decisions. And at a certain point, you got to stop and you got to say, well, if not me, then who? And I think I was just probably at my peak of frustration of begging and pleading other people to do what is right. And so the years of working with you, the years of working with so many of these advocates here kind of propelled me to run, which is a wild thought that it was probably around this time last year, maybe, that I don't see her. Our good friend Andronika Morris pulled me in a corner and said, "You should think about this." And here we to heed the advice and here we are, doing the work and fighting every day.
So you got a couple of meetings under your belt. As a public service commissioner, and so tell us what you're working on, and and also too, I'd be remiss if I didn't also just talk about too how your role as a public service commissioner connects in many ways to so much of the work that we're doing, because there's certainly economic opportunity issues around the grid, costs being passed on to consumers. We know that our good friends at Vote, have been trying to address this issue around the cost of phone calls in our prisons and jails. And so, can you talk a little bit about like your agenda and what you're trying to move this year?
Yeah, so we'll have our 4th meeting that I've been on the commission next Wednesday. And so some of the things that we've already done is the first vote I took was against Entergy Louisiana and putting extra money on your bills for hurricane damages. But we'll have another proposal. So for my Sin-Law friends, CLECO is asking for hurricane restoration money. That will be on our April 26th meeting. So please pay attention to that. When it comes to phone calls for incarcerated individuals, that's completely under the PSG's jurisdiction. We've worked on it. In February, I issued a directive to our staff to produce a comprehensive report. That report will go public next week at our April meeting. And then from there, we will start the work, as I say, of making those phone calls free, but we'll see where we can get some votes and move the needle. Also, I care significantly about disconnections. We know as the summer gets hot, disconnections is extremely important to people. And one of the things I don't know many people know is that, for instance, because our grid is so reliable on natural gas, the market would move so much that we have what's called a fuel rider. So the gas that it takes to power your home doesn't go into an equation. It flows straight from the price that Entergy Louisiana paid straight to your bill. And so this is why disconnections are important, because we know gas is extremely high. So every time we don't add renewable energy to the grid and we rely on natural gas, it's going to make your bill higher. We already know we're the 2nd poorest state in the nation. And so we have some of the highest late fees than anywhere in the nation. And the average per customer late fee is $5.50. The average late fee per customer in Louisiana is $16.75. So they already know this is a money-making. We have the highest reconnection fees, and so this is how all these issues combine. So about maybe 2 weeks ago, I issued a letter to every gas, electric, and water company. I'm asking for data from 21 and 22 on disconnections, what their average time of disconnection is, what's their cost of disconnection. They have until May 11th to report back to me, and we'll see who decides not to answer the letter, because they'll learn that they're in the honeymoon phase of Devontae. If you've known me, you know when I get mad, it's a very different equation. So if you have friends at any of those utility companies, you should tell them they should really answer my letter. Otherwise, come May 12th, they will see a very different side of me. But we're working to enact what we called on the campaign the Ratepayers Bill of Rights, which is starting with disconnections, but then we're going to go back into, we have an open docket that I'm looking at, which would put individuals on Medicaid, Medicare, and SNAP and WIC on a fixed billing income, which means if you are on one of those programs, your bill should not fluctuate outside of a small percentage. And so, there's a lot of work. I'm learning as sometimes the beauty of being one of 5 is that there's only 5. And the hardship of one of 5 is there are only 5. So building a coalition, but we feel very, very pleased with some of the work that's coming up and what you'll see over the next 100 days that I've been in office.
Excellent, excellent. It's always exciting to have one of our own where we can actually move policies and really work hard for change. And so I'm getting the eyes from Morgan that we need to wrap up sooner rather than later. And so, but while I have you, I know that the Budget Project has some really important legislation too that they're moving this year around EITC, trying to save income tax. And so, can you talk a little bit about EITC?
Absolutely. I'll take off my
Yes, I'm
commissioner
sorry.
hat
Yes.
and put on my LPB hat since I have multiple hats with multiple jobs right now. So yes, the earned income tax credit, which I believe almost all of you should qualify for them right now. Louisiana was the first southern state to ever pass an EITC, but sadly we have the lowest credit in the nation. So we at the Budget Project, along with Representative Willard, are working to double that credit to 10% of the federal credit instead of right now what is 5%. That bill is actually up tomorrow in the House Ways and Means Committee. So if you are around, please stop by, probably room 6, and drop in a green card for us and or tell the story about how you've used the earned income tax credit. However, but that's not the only working family item that we have this year. As you know, many of us struggle because people do not have access to paid family medical sick leave, which means when you are sick, when your family is sick, you don't have an access to a day off. So we have two pieces of legislation moving, one that would address state workers and one that would create a state program for family paid medical leave. And so those are being offered by Representative Jenkins and Representative Freeman and should come up in the near future. We are also working very diligently on some of our social safety net issues. We're working with Representative Green to make all school meal, breakfasts, and lunch free for every student in the state of Louisiana. We need to, if we make students go to school 24/7, we provide transportation, we provide Chromebooks now. If we're going to provide the books and the computers, we should also provide a meal. And so we are working on that as well as a host of other issues. If you are on our email list, we actually emailed our legislative priorities document out this morning, but if you are not, you can go to labudget.org. You can follow us on Twitter at LABudgetProject, and you can sign up for our daily dime, which will have the list of our priorities there. And so we are watching all of those and working, of course, on minimum wage, on some of the other economic support issues. We're happy that some of the things we were prepared for didn't return. So I think we've successfully stopped the payday loan industry from trying to get a draconian bill. So we'll
excellent.
They may try again next year, but at least we
we made it.
We made it. As you said, where we started in 2022 is very different than where we were in 2023. Yeah. But then lastly, there is switching back to the PSC hat, there is, I want everybody to be familiar, tomorrow is Carbon Capture Day. As you know, this is the growing new technology that is supposed to make our environment safe, but all it does is capture all of that CO2 and store it under our beautiful lakes and under people's homes. It is an unproven science. And we desperately need to stop that. So please, if you can, join the Alliance, another one of our partners in that. But secondly, if you are a CLECO customer, there is a bill up tomorrow that just got added on the agenda in Senate Commerce, which is a very convoluted process. I'm going to explain it very quickly and very fast, so Morgan will give me the eye. But basically, we have this process called securitization. This is where the utility company can go out and bond money up advance, and then we pay back that bond and our interest. CLECO owes their customers around $108 million for their defunct nuclear power plant. To amend the Securitization Act to allow them to securitize the money that is owed to people, and then they will pay the people back, but the people will pay the interest off the loan that they took out to pay them back for not providing them good power. And so even though there's still multiple steps before that bill is approved, and I'll tell you right now, I'm never voting for it, so they can, but before it gets to me, let's just kill it anyway. So I don't even have to deal with this. So if you're around tomorrow, Senate Commerce, 1 p.m., it's Senator Milligan's bill. It's just bad.
What's the bill number?
I'll find it in a second. I got to remember. But Morgan's getting closer to me, so I need I know what that means. I've been in church too long. I know when she starts scooting over.
Right. No, what? Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Devontae, for joining us. I always, I think that, people don't, like I think that also
Senate Bill 51. 50.
I also reflect on about 2022 was that 2022 felt like the year where people told me what couldn't happen and what couldn't be done. And I think that what is really funny to me is that we did a whole bunch of really hard things that people thought could not be done last year. And whether it is, like a literal public service commissioner that came out of our own social justice family, the Supreme Court case where folks are still telling me what they think is possible or not possible, but I do believe that we will come.
About that.
Yeah, we will come through victorious.
You put me through a lot in 2022, Ashley.
We all went through a lot. Okay, look, this is our civic duty. I didn't do it.
I forgot about the lawsuit in the Supreme Court and the redistricting. Oh.
Yeah, and then here's what's crazy is that whenever the decision comes down about Alabama, the Louisiana case, even though our cases are not combined, again, no matter what they do, it's going to impact our case. And then we get to go back to court all over again. So,
let's keep going.
Never a dull moment. But I also, think that it's important, too, that so much of the work that all of our organizations do, vote, Susan was out here with Louisiana Partnership for Children and Families, Louisiana Budget Project, Women with a Vision, Inclusive, so many of you and your organizations are doing things that people continue to say cannot be done. And I want, and I think that what we have proven is not only can it be done, but that also we're disrupting. And so as we just saw Representative Knox out here that was elected by the people. We are starting to see the very, I always tease because, Devontae had his watch party for election night right across from Energy. And I just, in that moment, felt like, I was like, but what was
I like to troll.
Yeah. But what was so powerful and literally felt in that moment for me was that we actually do have the power. I know we say it. I know, we talk about it, but that it is literally the personification of we have the power and we keep extending and using that power. And that's what's necessary. And that's also where so much of the fear and the pushback is coming from. I mean, the fact that now we don't want to teach Black history. We don't want diversity, equity and inclusion in our universities and schools and in our office buildings that we know definitely need it. It's really, really unfortunate. But we have to keep pushing because I feel like at the end of the day, the fight's always hardest right before you win. And there's also the idea too that they try to exhaust you before you actually get to right where you want to be. And so we just have to keep on fighting. And so proud to know you, so proud to have you in a place where you can do some really good work and also to continue to do the good work you already been doing.
Absolutely. Look, I got in 15 minutes the Entergy CEO in my office down the street, so we'll see what he has to say today.
I love it. Well, look, before we wrap up, I wanted to also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our bills. So we've got HB 449. Matt Willard is, I was teasing him. I was like, you're busy. I was like, he's got a really powerful portfolio of bills that he's moving this year. And so this would be to codify the recommendations that came out of the HCR 14, which is the Disability Task Force. And so I'm really, really excited about that. We are also working on, have a bill that is also to place someone from the disability community onto the Board of Election Supervisors, especially since they tried very hard to say that we didn't belong or shouldn't have a voice in that process, and so we will continue to fight. We've got SB 80 with Senator Cleo Fields, which basically codifies the redistricting process into law. So even though we had road shows and they did all the things, it is not the law that they have to do that. And so as we start to see tactics like we're seeing in Tennessee and other places, we want to make sure that we're codifying any process that gives voice and opportunity for community participation into law. And then we've also got, HB 380, Randall Gaines is moving legislation to redistrict the Supreme Court. It was the only body that was not redistricted last year, and we have 7 seats, and there's only one African American justice, and so this would seek to add another. And it is also significant to also just say, look, we only have one, but we're 33% of the population. And so, again, this is about representation and voice. And then HB 494, Pat Moore is moving legislation that would clarify nonpartisan activities. So as you know, when we do GOTV and election protection, we get the police called on us, all kinds of other, things because folks are confused about what nonpartisan activity is. We're not confused. They're confused. And so we are getting that clarified so that we can continue to provide election protection and do those things without the fear of having, poll workers and election workers calling the police on us. And also, too, to talk about what does it mean for us to have 2 football fields worth of space between us and a polling location. And so we've got some work to do there. And then last but not least is HB 538. And basically, this establishes a minimum number of early voting sites. And so this is to make sure that for families and voters that live in rural communities, that it sets parameters for population size that requires how many early voting sites. And so also trying to make sure that we create as much access as possible. And so those are, just a couple of those are the voting rights bills that we're moving this year, in addition to supporting all of the work that our partners are doing. But also, thank you guys for joining us for lunch today. Thank you for joining our lobby day. Again, we're really proud of the work we were able to do in 2022 and are already ushering in 2023, kicking butt. So we stand with you. We will fight with you. And if you need anything, certainly we're here. And so definitely reach out. Our website is powercoalition.org. Info@powercoalition.org is the email if you've got questions. I always tease because, the staff always tease me because I always give my cell number out. And I was like, it's really funny because not a lot of people use it. So I was like, so I always give it out because I was like, not a lot of people use it, so whatever. But you can call me at 225-802-2435. And I actually welcome your calls. I actually would like to, talk to folks, problem solve, and think through how we can be of support. We're also, providing support for other people's lobby days. And so, and so if we can be helpful, pick up the phone, if you need some, you need food or whatever, we're providing some small stipends to be able to support some of those costs. And so with that, I will let you guys back into, I will let Morgan come up and tell us what our next steps are.
Nurse White. The health committee. So thank everybody for joining. I think some folks have traveled a little further, so might need to get on the road. So if you have came here on bus or anything like that, just get with the person that brought you here and they'll let you know what your next steps are. We do welcome you to come back into the Capitol. Most of the committee meetings are ending now, and folks are breaking for lunch, but then they will convene as a large body. And that's always really great to see what's happening. As it's a little slower now, you get to folks here or supporting or testifying on behalf of or against. You can see what happens. We do have trainings available. Some of you attended our legislative road shows. Those were recorded. We had a virtual one yesterday that was recorded, and we're available to do those on demand. There are some things that are happening this week during session that you heard many people ask for support. We'll send out a weekly newsletter to let you know what you can support and what we're asking you to support and what we're asking you to rally against. I do know some folks wanted to say some things to support or that were coming down the docket that wanted to support. So if you do want to say that right now is the time. There's still some food left back there. I don't really know what the plate situation is looking like, but it's probably some napkins. But there is some food in the back. Please take the reports with you if you want some reports, because this is a lot of this work that's represented in these reports is your work. That's what the Power Coalition is about. It's the organization of organizations. So you'll see yourself reflected in this work, and we really try to make sure that you all are lifted out in the narrative of what happened.